Number Galactic Empire. Shocked as human diplomat declares, "You assaulted our home." Han Su stood at the tall window of the assembly hall, looking out at the endless darkness of space. Stars dotted the black like tiny diamonds, and planets moved slowly in their orbits far below. He had been watching this view for 3 years now, ever since Earth joined the Galactic Empire. In those 3 years, Han Su had learned many things. He had learned to speak the 17 most common galactic languages. He had learned to sit through meetings that lasted 6 hours without moving. He had learned to smile when the other delegates laughed at humans, calling them the baby species or the primitive newcomers. What Han Su had not learned was why the powerful Krell dynasty kept launching military ships into the outer regions of space. The Krell were terrifying to look at. They were tall creatures, with hard, black skin that looked like armor. Their heads were long and narrow, with 4 eyes arranged in a way that made Han Su deeply uncomfortable. They had too many arms, and their mouths clicked and clattered when they spoke. They had ruled a quarter of the galaxy for 10,000 years, and they did not think humans were worth their time or attention. That was about to change. Han Su walked through the crystal hallways of the assembly. Around him, aliens of every description moved about their business. Some floated in the air. Some had long tails. Some looked almost human, while others looked like nothing he could have imagined back on Earth. The assembly was like a living museum of the galaxy's power and variety. But today, something felt different in the air. Something felt wrong. He made his way to the communication center, where his team was waiting. Mira was already there, looking at data on a large screen. She was Earth's greatest scientist, and she had that look on her face that meant she had found something important. Teo, Han Su's partner in the diplomatic service, stood beside her with worry in his eyes. "What is it?" Han Su asked. Though somehow he already knew the answer was not good. "The asteroid," Mira said simply. "It has begun." 3 hours earlier, something had appeared on Earth's radar systems. An object the size of a small mountain was moving through space with purpose and speed. It was coming toward Earth. The calculations were clear. It would arrive in 24 hours, and nothing in Earth's inventory of weapons could stop it. The assembly had been informed immediately. Han Su had watched as the Krell delegation smiled, that strange smile of theirs. They had looked at each other with what Han Su now recognized as satisfaction. Vex Thor, the commander of the Krell forces, had stood and spoken words that would haunt Han Su forever. "The object is simply a natural occurrence," Vex Thor had said, his voice like rocks grinding together. "Sometimes, asteroids move through space. This is not our concern." But Han Su had known better. He could see it in the way Vex Thor's eyes moved. He could see it in the way the Krell delegation sat together, separate from everyone else, completely calm while everyone else buzzed with concern. "Can we stop it?" Han Su asked Mira now. "We have a chance," she said. "A small one. We have satellites with missile systems. If we work perfectly, if we time everything correctly, we might be able to break it into smaller pieces. Some damage would happen anyway, but we could save most of the world." Earth's people worked through the night. Engineers and scientists who had never spoken to each other before now worked side by side. Factory workers who had always been rivals joined together in common purpose. Farmers, teachers, soldiers, and artists all became part of one unified effort. This was what Han Su had discovered about humans during his 3 years away from home. When faced with something truly terrible, they did not break apart. They came together. The missiles fired at exactly the right moment. The asteroid, a mix of rock and metal, and something else that glowed with a sickly light, came apart in the sky above the Pacific Ocean. Pieces fell to Earth like metal rain. Cities were damaged. Farms were destroyed. Thousands of people died in the moments of chaos and fire that followed. But Earth survived. The species that the Krell thought was nothing, that they believed could be broken and eliminated. survived. When the fire cleared and the dust settled, Hansu sent an official message to the assembly. He requested a meeting with the Sovereignty Council, the ancient group of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. He said he had evidence of an intentional attack on Earth. He said he would present this evidence to everyone and demand justice. Teo advised against it. The Krell are too powerful, he said. No one will stand against them. We will be destroyed for making this accusation. But Hansu had seen something in the faces of Earth's people as they worked together. He had seen their determination. He had seen their refusal to accept death and destruction without fighting back. He had decided, in that moment, that humans would not bow down to the Krell. They would not accept being treated as targets to practice on. Mira worked for 3 days without sleep. She analyzed the asteroid's material. She studied its trajectory. She examined every piece of data that their instruments had collected. When she was finished, she brought her findings to Hansu, with tears of anger in her eyes. It is definitely Krell, she said. The metal used in the acceleration system is unique to their ships. The isotopes, the chemical markers, the atomic signatures, they are all Krell. This was not an accident. This was not a natural disaster. This was an attack. They sent it at us, on purpose. Hansu felt something harden in his chest. This was the moment. This was when Earth would either disappear into history as an unimportant species that accepted injustice, or they would stand up and demand to be treated with respect. He began to prepare his presentation for the Sovereignty Council. He gathered all the evidence. He practiced his words. He made sure every detail was perfect, because he knew that everything his species had worked for, everything they had survived, all the dreams they had for their place among the stars, depended on what he said in that great chamber. On the night before his presentation, Hansu looked out at space again from the assembly hall window. Earth was just a small blue dot in the distance. Impossible to see without magnification. Billions of people lived there. People he had never met. People who were counting on him without knowing it. They were counting on him to make their attackers answer for what they had done. They were counting on him to prove that humans deserved a place in the galaxy as equals, not as targets. He made a promise to himself and to Earth in that moment. He would speak the truth. He would not be afraid. And he would make sure that the galaxy knew what the Krell had done. Tomorrow, everything would change. Hansu returned to Earth on a military transport ship, one of the fastest vessels available to the human government. As he descended through Earth's atmosphere, he could see the scars from the asteroid impact. Entire forests had been burned black. Cities were covered in a fine ash. The ocean had been disrupted, creating waves that had destroyed coastal towns. But he could also see something else. He could see movement. He could see people rebuilding. He could see lights coming back on in the darkness. Humans were already working to repair what had been broken. Seoul was different from how Hansu remembered it. The city he had grown up in was still there, but it was transformed. Government buildings had been converted into emergency centers. Military bases had become research facilities. Scientists and engineers worked in every available space, driven by a purpose that Hansu had never seen before. The survival of their species depended on what they could discover and prove. Dr. Mira was waiting for him in a secure bunker beneath the city. She looked exhausted. Her black hair was tied back hastily, and her eyes were red from working without adequate sleep, but her mind was sharp and clear. She had been analyzing the asteroid fragments for 72 hours straight, and she had made discoveries that would change everything. The evidence is perfect, Mira said, spreading out her data on multiple screens. Look at this. This is the trajectory of the asteroid. Someone accelerated it deliberately. The pattern of acceleration is unique to Krell propulsion technology. I have compared it to every database we have access to, and there is no other explanation. On Hopperins 1, she pulled up another image. It showed the composition of the asteroid's material at the molecular level. Chemical elements were highlighted in different colors. Some glowed bright red. These isotopes here, Mira pointed to the red indicators, are radioactive markers that only the Krell use. It is like leaving your fingerprints at a crime scene. They accelerated this asteroid with their own ships and their own technology. There is absolutely no doubt. Hansu felt his heart rate increase. This was the evidence he needed. This was proof that would stand up to any investigation. What does this mean? He asked, though he already understood the answer. It means the Krell attacked us on purpose, Mira said quietly. It was not random. It was not an accident. And it was not the first time. She pulled up a new file, one that made Hansu's blood run cold. It contained historical records of asteroids and space debris that had impacted developing worlds over the past 50 years. There were dozens of them, hundreds of them. Each one had been officially recorded as a natural event. Each one had killed millions of people. Each one had destroyed civilizations. I searched through ancient records, Mira continued. I found patterns. I found dates. I found technology signatures. They have been destroying species that were just beginning to develop space travel. They have been eliminating competition before these species could become powerful. Why? Hansu asked, though in his mind he already knew the answer. The Krell wanted to stay in power. They wanted to keep the galaxy under their control. New, young species represented a threat to their dominance. Because they can, Mira said simply. Because no one has ever challenged them. Because they thought they would never be caught. Teo entered the bunker then, carrying a datapad. He looked worried, but he also looked determined. We have another problem, Teo said, and another opportunity. He explained that encrypted messages had been intercepted. They were Krell communications, military orders discussing a second strike against Earth. This strike was going to be much larger than the first. The Krell were planning to hit Earth's major cities simultaneously. They wanted to be sure that humanity would not survive a second assault. How much time do we have? Hansu asked. 3 weeks, Teo said. Maybe less. They are gathering their forces now. Kaftari. The three of them looked at each other in the dim light of the bunker. They understood what this meant. They had to act immediately. They had to present their evidence to the Galactic Assembly. They had to force the issue before the Krell had a chance to execute their new plan. I need to speak to the Sovereignty Council, Hansu said. I need to formally accuse the Krell of systematic aggression against developing civilizations. That is dangerous, Teo warned. The Krell have powerful allies. They have influence throughout the galaxy. If we accuse them directly and fail to prove our case, Earth will be destroyed. The Empire will not protect us. If we do nothing, we will definitely be destroyed, Hansu countered. At least this way, we have a chance. Mira nodded in agreement. The evidence is overwhelming. If we present it correctly, if we show the pattern across decades and across different worlds, the Council will have to listen. They will have to investigate. They will have to take action. Hansu spent the next 2 weeks preparing his presentation. He worked with Mira on every detail of the scientific evidence. He practiced his words with Teo, learning exactly how to present the information in a way that would be most persuasive. He studied the faces and personalities of the council members, learning what arguments would be most effective with each individual. He also made contact with other species. Quietly, carefully, he reached out to delegates he had met over the years. He explained what the Krell had done. Some were sympathetic immediately, some were afraid. But some, he discovered, had their own stories. They had their own reasons to distrust the Krell. They had their own grievances that had been building for years, or even decades. A representative from the Velnar Collective, a species of traders who had always been marginalized by the Krell, reached out to Hansu personally. If you are brave enough to stand against the Krell, the Velnar said through the communication system, you will not stand alone. We will support you. With those words, Hansu understood that he had started something much larger than himself. This was not just about Earth anymore. This was about every young civilization that the Krell had victimized. This was about challenging a power that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. On the night before his presentation to the Sovereignty Council, Hansu stood on the roof of the government building in Seoul. The city lights spread out beneath him. Thousands and thousands of lights, representing billions of lives. These people had no idea that their fate was being decided by what he would say tomorrow. They had no idea that their survival rested on his words, and Mira's evidence, and Teo's support. Hansu looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the atmosphere, was the vast machinery of the Galactic Empire. The assembly floated in space, an artificial structure the size of a small planet, where representatives from 1,000 worlds met to make decisions about the galaxy. Tomorrow, he would go back up there. Tomorrow, he would accuse the most powerful military force in the galaxy of attempted genocide. Tomorrow, he would either become the voice that changed history or the fool who destroyed his species. Either way, there was no turning back now. Hansu took a deep breath of Earth's air, filling his lungs with the atmosphere of home. Then he turned away from the stars and went back inside to prepare for the biggest moment of his life. The Grand Assembly Chamber was the most impressive structure Hansu had ever seen. The walls curved upward to a ceiling so high that it seemed to disappear into infinity. Around the vast circular floor, seats rose up in levels, each level representing a different status in the galactic hierarchy. The most powerful species sat at the top. The newest and smallest civilizations sat at the bottom. Humans sat very close to the bottom. Today, all 500 seats were filled. Delegates from across the galaxy had come to hear Hansu speak. Word had spread through the assembly about his accusations against the Krell. Some delegates thought he was brave. Others thought he was foolish. The Krell delegation certainly thought he was foolish. Hansu walked to the center of the chamber, to the small platform where speakers stood to address the council. His feet echoed on the metal floor. Around him, thousands of eyes watched. Eyes that were round and eyes that were square. Eyes that glowed in the dark, and eyes that could see into the ultraviolet spectrum. Hansu felt very small. He felt very human. The council president, an ancient being named Zorthal who had been alive for over 3,000 years, looked down at Hansu from his elevated seat. "The human delegate from Earth may speak," Zorthal said, his voice carrying through the chamber with amplification technology. "Proceed with your presentation." Hansu activated the holographic display system. Above him, an image of Earth appeared, rotating slowly in three-dimensional space. Then the asteroid appeared, a gray and brown rock the size of a mountain. 3 weeks ago, Hansu began, his voice steady despite the nervousness he felt. "An object was launched at my world. This object was designed to destroy Earth and kill billions of human beings. The Krell dynasty has claimed this was a natural occurrence. I am here today to tell you that this is a lie." The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates began talking to each other. Some stood up from their seats. The president banged his gavel, and slowly the room became quiet again. "We have scientific evidence," Hansu continued, activating the next part of his presentation. The hologram showed the atomic composition of the asteroid, the isotopes highlighted in bright red. This object contains isotopes that can only be created by Krell technology. Additionally, the acceleration pattern matches perfectly with Krell propulsion systems. This was not a natural event. This was an attack. Vexthor, the Krell commander, stood up from the Krell section. He was enormous, his black armor reflecting the light of the chamber. When he spoke, his voice was like an earthquake. "The human speaks lies," Vexthor said. "We do not even acknowledge humans as worthy opponents. Why would we bother to attack you? You are nothing." But Hansu had prepared for this response. "Then you deny that Krell technology was involved?" Hansu asked carefully. "I deny nothing and everything," Vexthor snapped. "Your accusations are meaningless. But moments ago, Hansu said, turning to address the entire chamber. Vex Thor told us this was a natural occurrence. Now he says he does not acknowledge humans as worthy opponents. But if it was natural, how does he know it was not caused by humans attacking our own world? And if the Krell do not acknowledge humans as worthy opponents, why would Vex Thor bother to respond to our accusations at all? The chamber became quiet. Hansu could see delegates looking at each other, beginning to realize the trap that had been set. Furthermore, Hansu continued, activating the next hologram. This was not an isolated incident. The hologram changed, showing dozens of asteroids impacting different worlds across decades. Each impact was marked with a date and a location. 52 confirmed asteroid strikes on developing worlds in the past 50 years, Hansu said. All of them contain Krell isotopes. All of them follow Krell acceleration patterns. All of them destroyed young civilizations that were just beginning to develop space travel. The chamber exploded in chaos. Delegates were standing now, shouting questions and demands. Security forces moved to the edges of the chamber. The president banged his gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order. The Velnar delegate stood up, his insectoid form visible from across the chamber. I have records of Velnar colonies destroyed by such strikes, the Velnar said loudly. Colonies that we believed were destroyed by natural causes. I demand an investigation. Timewar. Katter. Timewar. 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 Other voices joined in. A representative from the Kryn Confederacy, longtime rivals of the Krell, stood and spoke. The Krell have been eliminating competition for centuries. We have suspected this for years, but had no proof. Even some of the neutral species were calling for action. The ancient order of the Galactic Empire was cracking. The system that had kept the Krell in power was being challenged. Vex Thor was furious. He clicked his mandibles in an aggressive display, and several Krell soldiers moved toward Hansu's platform. Security forces moved to block them. For a moment, it seemed like violence might erupt right there in the chamber. Then Zorthal stood. The ancient being's voice was quieter than Vex Thor's, but it carried more weight because everyone in the chamber knew that Zorthal had been alive long enough to see empires rise and fall. There will be a formal investigation, Zorthal announced. All evidence will be examined. All accusations will be tested. Until this investigation is complete, there will be no violence in this chamber. The human delegate will be protected, and the Krell dynasty will submit to the authority of the council. Vex Thor's face turned a darker shade of black. His 4 eyes burned with rage, but he sat back down in his seat. Hansu's hands were shaking as he stepped down from the platform. He had done it. He had accused the most powerful military force in the galaxy in front of witnesses from every corner of civilization. He had presented evidence that could not be denied. He had set in motion events that would determine not only the fate of Earth, but the fate of the entire galactic order. As he made his way out of the chamber, delegates from different species reached out to him. Some placed their appendages on his shoulder in a gesture of respect. The Velnar was waiting for him at the exit. You have started something important today, the Velnar said. Something that should have been started long ago. Hansu nodded, but he felt no victory. He felt only the weight of what came next. The Krell were powerful, and they were now trapped like a dangerous animal. Trapped animals fought back, and when the Krell fought back, the galaxy would burn. That night, Hansu transmitted a message to Earth. He told them what had happened. He told them that the Sovereignty Council was now investigating the attacks. He told them that an official inquiry would take place, but he also warned them. He told them to prepare for more attacks. He told them that the Krell would not accept this challenge to their authority quietly. He told them that the real fight was just beginning. On Earth, in bunkers and homes and government buildings, humans listened to their diplomats' words and prepared themselves for what was coming. They did not know if they would survive, but they knew they would fight. That was what humans did. They stood up, they fought, and they refused to accept defeat. The response to Hansu's accusations came faster than anyone expected. Within days of his presentation, Hansu's communication systems were flooded with messages from civilizations across the galaxy. Some of these messages were supportive. Some were angry. And some offered something that Hansu had not expected. They offered military support. The first to contact him was the Velnar Collective. They sent a message through the secure diplomatic channels, offering protection and resources. The Velnar had been marginalized by the Krell for centuries. They were traders and scientists, not warriors, but they had their own fleet of defensive ships. More importantly, they had information. They had been studying Krell behavior for hundreds of years, watching and waiting for an opportunity to challenge the dynasty's dominance. "You have given us that opportunity," the Velnar representative said in a holographic message. "We will help you prove your case. We will provide resources for your investigation. We will stand with Earth before the Council. We will stand with Earth. We will stand with Earth. We will stand with Earth." The Kryn Confederacy came next. The Kryn were warriors. They had fought the Krell countless times over the past 1,000 years, winning some battles and losing others. Their military was smaller than the Krell's, but it was experienced and fierce. A Kryn general named K. Lorne reached out to Captain Dae Jung, who had become Earth's primary military strategist. "The Krell have tried to destroy us many times," K. Lorne said, his crimson skin reflecting the holographic light. "But they have failed. We have learned to fight them. We have learned their tactics. We can teach your people how to defend themselves." Over the next week, representatives from a dozen different civilizations contacted Hansu. Some were from small worlds that had lost colonies to the asteroid strikes. Some were from larger nations that simply wanted to see the Krell's power challenged. Some had their own reasons for supporting Earth that had nothing to do with justice. But they all had the same message. Earth was not alone. Captain Dae Jung worked closely with the military advisors that the different species sent. In a training facility beneath the city of Seoul, Kylorn and other alien generals taught human soldiers about weapons, systems, and tactical warfare. They taught them about shield technology and energy weapons. They taught them about coordinating with other species. More importantly, they taught them confidence. They taught them that humans, despite having no ancient weapons and no galactic military experience, could learn to fight and could learn to win. Dr. Mira was working on something different. She had been contacted by scientists from the Velnar Collective and the Kryn Confederacy. Together, they formed a research team that began to examine all the evidence of the asteroid strikes going back 50 years. They compared notes. They shared data. They cross-referenced historical records. What they discovered was more devastating than anyone had imagined. The asteroid strikes were not random. They were not scattered randomly across the galaxy. They followed a clear pattern. The Krell had targeted specifically those civilizations that had shown the most promise in their early development. They had eliminated the species most likely to become powerful enough to challenge Krell dominance in the future. They were being strategic. Mira explained to Hansu over a secure communication line. They were not just destroying civilizations for fun. They were eliminating threats before they could develop. Think about it. Every species they attacked was on a path to rapid technological development. Every species they hit had unified governments or were about to unite. They were attacking civilizations that had the potential to become major galactic powers. So Earth was targeted because we were going to become too powerful? Hansu asked. Exactly, Mira confirmed. And we survived. We detected and deflected their first attack. We have the capacity to learn quickly and adapt. The Krell know this. That is why they planned a second strike. They want to make sure we never get the chance to develop further. The most surprising contact came 3 days later. It came through an encrypted channel that had been hidden deep within the Krell military communications network. The message was from a high-ranking Krell general named Sekhal. I can no longer follow the orders of Vex Thor and the Dynasty. Sekhal wrote, in perfect galactic standard language. What they have done is wrong. What they are planning to do is evil. I wish to defect. I wish to provide classified military information to help Earth and her allies. But I must be assured of asylum for myself and my family. Han Su brought this message to Teo and to Earth's leadership through a secure video conference. The decision was not easy. Taking in a defecting Krell general was incredibly dangerous. If discovered, the Krell would see it as an act of war. But the opportunity to have access to Krell military intelligence was too valuable to pass up. We accept your terms. Han Su sent back to Sekhal. We will grant you and your family asylum on Earth. We will protect you. We will give you a new life. In return, we ask only for the truth about the Krell dynasty's actions. 3 days later, Sekhal arrived on Earth in a small shuttle that landed in a remote desert area, far from any city. He was as impressive and terrifying in person as he was in holographic form. His black armor was scarred from decades of combat. His eyes held the weight of someone who had seen too much violence. But he was also genuinely sorry. As he spoke to Han Su and the military leaders of Earth, his mandibles trembled with emotion. He explained that he had been part of the system for hundreds of years. He had carried out the orders he was given. He had helped destroy civilizations that he now understood had done nothing to deserve destruction. The Krell dynasty has become corrupt, Sekhal said, his voice like rocks grinding together. We were once warriors with honor. Now we are murderers who kill from the shadows. We destroy species before they can even become threats. This is not honor. This is cowardice. I can no longer be part of this. We to their read 18. Sekhal brought with him detailed information about Krell military capabilities. He brought coordinates to military bases. He brought codes that could access Krell communication networks. He brought everything that Han Su and the military leaders needed to build a defense strategy. They will attack within 2 weeks, Sekhal warned. The attack will be massive. They will use multiple weapon systems. They will attack from different directions simultaneously. They want to overwhelm your defenses completely. They want to make sure Earth is destroyed before any other civilization can send help. Captain Daejung looked at the military data that Sekhal provided, and his face became very serious. We cannot defend against this alone, Daejung said. We need the Kryn fleet. We need the Velnar defensive satellites. We need everyone working together. 1. Han Su sent urgent messages to all the civilizations that had pledged support to Earth. He explained the situation. He explained that the Krell were about to strike, and that if Earth fell, the next attack would come against the Kryn or the Velnar or any other species that had stood against the dynasty. The responses were immediate and overwhelming. The Kryn sent military ships. The Velnar sent defensive platforms. Even some of the neutral species, moved by the courage of what Earth was trying to do, offered support. Within days, there was a unified defense network protecting Earth and the surrounding space. The Krell had expected Earth to be alone and defenseless. What they found instead was an alliance of species united by the simple belief that injustice should not be tolerated. The Krell had assumed that no one would stand against them. They had been proven wrong. As the second wave of Krell attacks approached, Han Su stood in the command center in Seoul, surrounded by displays showing military movements across the solar system. He could see the Krell ships moving into position. He could see the Allied defense network preparing to meet them. For 3 years, Han Su had been a diplomat. He had spoken words and negotiated agreements. Now he was watching humanity become something new. They were becoming warriors. They were becoming a force in the galaxy that could not be ignored. The Krell were coming. And they were going to discover that attacking Earth was the biggest mistake the dynasty had ever made. The chamber where the Sovereignty Council met for the formal trial was even larger than the Assembly Hall. This was the oldest chamber in the galactic government, a place where the most important decisions affecting billions of lives had been made for thousands of years. The walls were made of a material that was older than most civilizations, carved with the names of every major decision ever made here. Now, the name of another decision would be added. A decision that would change everything. Han Su sat in the human section, surrounded by representatives from Earth's government and military. Across from him sat the Krell delegation, led by Vex Thor. The commander's black armor seemed to absorb the light around him. His eyes were cold and filled with rage at what was about to happen. The trial lasted for 3 days. The first day was dedicated to scientific evidence. Dr. Mi-Ra presented her findings with perfect clarity and precision. She showed the isotopic signatures. She showed the acceleration patterns. She showed the 50-year pattern of attacks against developing worlds. Every piece of evidence was carefully documented and verified. When the Krell scientists tried to argue that the evidence could be explained differently, Mi-Ra calmly showed why each alternative explanation was impossible. By the end of the first day, even the most neutral observers had to accept that the evidence was overwhelming. The second day was dedicated to testimony from the affected civilizations. Representatives from worlds that had been hit by the asteroid strikes came forward and told their stories. They spoke of cities destroyed. They spoke of populations decimated. They spoke of colonies that had been on the verge of establishing themselves when they were suddenly wiped out by impossible explosions from the sky. Some of the representatives cried as they spoke. Some were so angry that they could barely control their voices. But all of them told the same story. The Krell had attacked them deliberately. An ancient being from a species called the Ether, a civilization that had been witness to much of galactic history, stood before the council and spoke words that seemed to carry the weight of ages. "I have lived for 5,000 years," the Ether said. "I have seen many cycles of power and decline. I have seen empires rise and then fall into ruin, but I have never witnessed such calculated cruelty. The Krell dynasty has not just attacked these worlds. They have systematically eliminated the very possibility of competition. They have appointed themselves judges of which species deserve to exist and which do not. This is not justice. This is tyranny." The second day ended with the council members looking at each other with expressions of shock and disgust. What had been presented was not just a crime. It was a systematic campaign of genocide carried out across decades. On the third day, it was the Krell's turn to present their defense. Vex Thor stood before the council and spoke with the confidence of someone who had never been challenged seriously before. He argued that the Krell had the right to do what was necessary to preserve galactic stability. He claimed that young civilizations were inherently unstable and dangerous. He said that the attacks had been carried out to protect established worlds from the chaos that new species always created. "These attacks were not murder," Vex Thor said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We were saving the galaxy from the inevitable wars that would come if these species were allowed to develop. We were acting as stewards of order in an otherwise chaotic universe." But his words rang hollow. Every argument he made only revealed more of the arrogance that had made the Krell dynasty such poor guardians of galactic peace. His defense did not explain why the attacks had to be done in secret. His defense did not explain why the Krell had lied about them. His defense did not explain why species that had never threatened anyone had been destroyed. Then came the moment that everyone had been waiting for. Sek Hall was brought forward as a witness. He was dressed in simple clothing now, having surrendered his Krell military uniform. His appearance shocked many of the delegates. Few of them had ever seen a Krell who was not in full armor and official regalia. Sek Hall told the truth about the Krell military operations. He described the orders that had been given. He named the commanders who had carried them out. He provided information about the weapons systems used and the targeting protocols that had been implemented. He explained how the Krell had carefully chosen which developing civilizations to attack based on their potential for future development. Most importantly, he explained that there was no legitimate reason for any of the attacks. The civilizations that had been destroyed had not threatened anyone. They had not been engaged in any wars. They had simply been existing and developing naturally. They had been killed for the crime of being capable and innovative. When Sek Hall finished his testimony, Vexthor tried to argue that Sekhal was lying. He tried to claim that Sekhal had been corrupted by the humans. But the evidence was too overwhelming. Too many witnesses had come forward. Too much documentation had been presented. The lies could not hold back the truth any longer. Finally, it was time for the defense arguments. Teo stood for Earth and presented the case for why the Krell dynasty should be held accountable for their crimes. He spoke with passion and clarity. He spoke of the millions of lives that had been destroyed. He spoke of the species that had been eliminated. He spoke of the civilizations that had been prevented from ever reaching their full potential. The Krell claim they were protecting galactic stability, Teo said. But how is genocide protection? How is murder prevention? The only thing being prevented was the Krell's loss of power. They attacked civilizations that posed no threat to anyone. They attacked civilizations that had the potential to become equals to the Krell. That is not stewardship. That is not justice. That is the desperate action of a power that fears it is losing control. Then Hansu was asked to present Earth's final statement. He stood before the council, and he looked at all 500 delegates. He looked at beings that had ruled the galaxy and beings that represented the smallest civilizations. He looked at the Krell delegation, with their burned and hateful eyes. 3 weeks ago, Hansu began, the Krell tried to destroy my world. We were not prepared for what came at us from the sky. We had no ancient weapons. We had no military tradition stretching back thousands of years. But we had something else. We had unity. We had determination. We had the refusal to accept that we were meant to be victims. Hansu paused, letting his words sink in. Humanity is young, he continued. We joined this galactic community only recently. We did not expect to be attacked. We did not expect to have to fight for our right to exist. But when the test came, we stood up. We did not hide. We did not beg for mercy. We stood up, and we said no. We said that our lives mattered. We said that our right to exist was as valid as any other species. And we demanded justice. Hansu gestured toward the Krell section. The Krell believed that might made right. The Krell believed that power was the only thing that mattered in the galaxy. But they were wrong. What matters is truth. What matters is justice. What matters is the courage to stand against injustice even when you are small and weak and alone. Humanity is none of those things anymore. We have allies now. We have the support of civilizations that see what the Krell have done and refuse to accept it. We have the support of species that were targeted by the Krell and have finally been given a voice. Hansu looked directly at the council president. The Krell dynasty must be held accountable, Hansu said simply. Their commanders must be tried. Their military must be reorganized. Their power must be reduced. And the galaxy must know that attacking any civilization, no matter how young or how small, will result in consequences. The council voted. The vote was almost unanimous. Only 3 delegates, all closely allied with the Krell, voted against holding the dynasty accountable. The rest voted in favor of an investigation that would lead to trials and reparations. Vexthor stood and walked out of the chamber, his soldiers following behind him. He did not bow. He did not accept the verdict. But he had no choice. The age of Krell dominance was ending. As Hansu watched the Krell commander leave, he felt an enormous weight lift from his shoulders. Earth had survived. Earth had won. Humanity would continue to exist among the stars. But more than that, the entire galactic order had changed. The council president looked at Hansu and said words that would be remembered for ages to come. Today, the Galactic Empire learned a lesson from its youngest member, Zorthal said. Humanity has taught us that justice matters. Humanity has taught us that courage comes in many forms. Humanity has taught us that even the smallest species can change the course of history. Earth shall be granted full voting rights in this council. Humanity's place among the stars is now secure. Hansu bowed, and as he did, He thought of Earth. He thought of Mira, and Teo, and Daejung. He thought of all the humans who had come together to survive an impossible test. He thought of the future stretching out before them, filled with possibility and hope. The trial had changed everything. Now, the real work of building a new galactic order could begin.